So I was going to do one of my usual reviews for Chivalry 2, but I absolutely love this game, so I'm just going to dedicate this video to expressing that. There will be some review elements though, because I just can't help myself. So I suppose you could technically call it a review in itself, but I usually try to fairly analyse the good and bad when critiquing a game to offer a more balanced view. But there is no bad in this video, only badass. I will do my usual rundown of what the game is about though, so you can decide for yourself if you think you'll love it as much as me. Chivalry 2 is a medieval themed hack and slash game developed by Torn Banner Studios and published by Tripwire Interactive. The game is the sequel to Chivalry Medieval Warfare and boasts some significant improvements to its predecessor. The game is extremely well received by critics and players alike, so it's clearly not just me that's developed a soft spot for this humorous and brutal outing. Funnily enough, my interest in this game was born out of frustration of trying to play Battlefield 4. I feel like I'm generally terrible at those games and I always seem to get killed by some unseen sniper from across the map. That alone doesn't usually bother me though, it's just part of the game. I usually get frustrated learning the loadouts and which of the vast array of weapons to use, and that's before acquiring all the accessories for them. Don't get me wrong, I do like these games and I'm very much looking forward to Battlefield 2042, but sometimes you just want to pick up a game and play. I happened to catch some footage of Chivalry 2 on YouTube and thought, yes, this looks like the game for me. There were swords, axes and absolute chaos. No across the map snipers to be seen anywhere either, and no complicated loadouts. I had hoped the controls were quite straightforward and I could button mash my way to victory, but as I worked my way through the tutorial, I soon realised that wasn't the case. I didn't get off to the best of starts and took far longer than I care to admit trying to complete the tutorial. Pro tip for anyone thinking of getting the game though, play in third person. It definitely makes mastering the controls so much easier. I also can't help but point out that your mentor in this beginning section has possibly the most annoying voice I have ever heard.
Oh great, they sent me another future corpse to train. You there, can you see alright?
Which was made worse by the fact he kept repeating the same lines as I kept failing at learning the controls. So the controls are pretty tricky, and I would definitely recommend spending some time doing this tutorial. I also found the game significantly easier with a controller too. After finally managed to grasp the basics of the controls, I was thrown into a free-for-all match on a dark and gloomy battlefield. It was absolute chaos and I died many glorious deaths, which included losing limbs and having my head cut off. This game mode wasn't what made me fall in love with the game though. Chivalry 2 has much more to offer than this. Once you're into the main game, you can play with friends in parties of up to 4 people. While you don't find yourselves working together that often, it's probably the most fun I've had playing online with friends in a long time. This game was also my very first live stream, so it holds a special place in my heart for that. And I can see us streaming this for a long time yet. So yeah, what about the variety of game modes? My favourite to play are the objective based ones. These can be played in lobbies of up to 40 or 64 and you're either attacking or defending an objective. We always favour the 64 player game modes, because why wouldn't you want as much carnage as possible?
I tell you, because you used the controller.
Oh, well, I just been, I don't even know what happened then.
Was that big rock flying thing?
Yes, that caught me. The team objectives include epic castle sieges, forest ambushes, and some good old medieval pillaging. When attacking, you're usually at the mercy of those filthy archers, or if you do manage to make a break for it, you'll get swarmed and sliced up by about 5 other players. During those final pushes, it is absolute mayhem and team damage is completely unavoidable. But there's something about this close combat madness that I just love. In your typical shooters, I get frustrated by being killed from across the map, as I said earlier, but Chivalry 2 is much more up close and personal. Despite the controls arguably being harder, I just find it so much more satisfying to play. You can also stand on a catapult and be launched over the battlements straight into certain death. And let us not forget what we refer to as a launch party. If you stand close enough to explosives planted on either the trebuchets or the ships, your ragdoll of a corpse will literally get launched several feet into the air. This stupid game within a game we devised has become a highlight for both us and our viewers when we're streaming. If you're so inclined, there's also the aforementioned free-for-all game mode as well as team deathmatch. I'm not a huge fan of these, but it's still a bit of dumb fun to jump into, as the other game mode can be pretty long. These game modes also boast some different maps too, my favourite of which is probably the tournament arena. There's nowhere to hide, and I always imagined this was once a nice civilised jousting tournament that somehow descended into a violent brawl. All of this is to an amazing soundtrack that makes me feel completely epic, even when I'm being hacked to pieces as soon as I get near anyone. I'm also pretty impressed with the community and the in-game chat. It's generally extremely civil compared to what is happening in the game. I was a little bit nervous when hosting my first stream because I can't really control what pops up in the chat, but overall the community seems great. You get your usual trolls and unsavoury characters, but it's far better than some of the other big titles I play, and they're always dealt with swiftly. While I try not to let the chat get to me, it can sometimes take the fun out of a game when all you see is general senseless abuse scrolling by on the chat. The community seems to take the game relatively seriously as well, but without sucking the fun out of it. After moaning about loadouts in other games earlier, it seems fitting to talk about this game's equivalent. Thankfully, it's much more simple and I was able to wrap my head around it pretty quickly. Although thinking about this did conjure up an image of an ACOG scope mounted onto a longsword. There's 4 different classes to choose from, each coming with an array of primary and secondary weapons, and that's about as complicated as it gets. As you progress through the levels, you just unlock a better version of each weapon. Perfect. I wanted something straightforward, and that's exactly what Chivalry 2 gave me. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this slightly different take on a review video, and I probably will do more of these for other games that I love, regardless of the era they were released in. Sometimes I just want to talk about why I like something so much, rather than having to analyse it. Let me know in the comments what you think of Chivalry 2. Will you be taking the plunge into some medieval warfare?